Steve Johnson positioned himself outside his wife's office at 7 p.m., fully intent on ending the facade they called their marriage. Over time, husbands often overlook the signs, especially when their wives have never stayed late at work before. However, Steve was observant and had noticed a change occurring for the past 2 months. It all began when he spotted Angela, his wife, wearing red high-heeled shoes to her workplace. This was unusual as Angela loathed heels and only reserved them for special occasions or intimate moments in the bedroom. The white thigh-high stockings that she paired with the red heels were a particular favorite of Steve's, and he believed that it added an extra spark to their love life. But now she was wearing them to work, sparking Steve's curiosity and prompting him to address the issue directly. During a conversation, Steve asked Angela if something was going on, to which she responded that she had a meeting with her boss and wanted to present herself as a professional. Angela paused briefly and continued on her way without turning back. Steve remained silent, contemplating whether this change truly reflected professionalism or discreetly concealed something else. As time went on, the truth gradually unfolded. Initially, it started with occasional hours, but soon escalated to 2 or 3 hours multiple times a week. Steve's realization came when he discovered that Angela was attending a bachelorette party, an activity she typically disapproved of, preferring simple dinners or coffee outings instead. However, the revelation truly hit him when he followed her to her boss, Martin Schindler's house in Glen Ellen, a location he recognized from previous gatherings. After waiting for 1 hour to confirm her intentions, Steve deflated all 4 tires of his wife's car and returned home. Although Angela kept quiet about the tire incident, she disclosed it to their daughter, Jenny, expressing relief that someone had simply released the air. Jenny questioned the authenticity of the explanation, and Angela, grateful that the tires were not damaged, explained that Steve had insisted on her carrying an air pump in the trunk. Angela admitted to attending a dance club with friends and suggested avoiding such activities in the future. Feeling betrayed, Steve sought legal advice to initiate the divorce process, which led him to sit in his car outside Angela's office, waiting for her to be served with the divorce papers. Despite the sadness of ending their 21-year-long marriage, they had one significant source of joy: their 17-year-old daughter, Jenny. They had initially met when Angela, an aspiring paralegal working as a receptionist, had assisted Steve with a contract dispute. They had dated happily for 2 years before tying the knot. However, everything changed when Angela started working for Martin Schindler. Despite Steve's long working hours as a truck driver, they always made time for family activities, such as weekend trips that revolved around Jenny's schedule and included sports and other engaging endeavors. They explored places like Galena, Illinois, for wineries, and Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, for shopping and relaxation. Angela's betrayal, only discovered through the choice of her footwear, severed the connection they once had. As Angela distanced herself, Steve, previously unaware of her infidelity, noticed a decline in her demeanor. This led him to recall the night he had followed her and sparked the conversation that ended without a proper goodbye. Following Angela into the garage, Steve witnessed her departure, seized the keys, and quickly followed. Their neighborhood had a single exit, with a maze of streets leading to their home. Catching up with her on Main Street, Steve trailed her all the way to Martin's house. Deciding to consult a lawyer on Monday, he avoided any further encounters with Angela throughout the weekend. His goal was not to pursue a contentious approach. He merely sought a peaceful resolution to their marriage. Feeling her disinterest through her words and actions, he questioned whether it was worth holding on to a relationship that was slipping away. He believed that Angela could have her boss without him putting up a fight. Steve shared these feelings with his daughter on that Monday, disclosing Angela's involvement with her boss and expressing his belief that she was cheating on him. His daughter, affectionately calling him Pumpkin, acknowledged the information but doubted its veracity, saying, "No way, Daddy, I don't believe it. I followed her to his house. She claimed she was going to meet friends, but that's not true." She went straight to her boss's house, but her tires were damaged at the club. No, honey. I did it. Right in front of her boyfriend's house when I realized she wasn't heading to the club. It's hard to believe, Dad. Me too, but it's true. His daughter was sitting next to him in the car, anticipating the inevitable quarrels. Are you sure, Dad? No chance. Jenny asked. No, baby, it's over. She broke my trust and broke my heart. I can't stand this kind of betrayal. Even if she had a reason, there is no excuse for a long-term relationship. What if she got drunk? And it happened once. Maybe if she had been raped, things would have been different. No, she chose this path. She betrayed my trust. Trust is critical for those whom you can never love, whom you cannot trust. I will never be able to love someone who betrayed me in this way. Our marriage fell apart. Jenny saw two men approaching the car from the window. What a fool, commented Angela Johnson, looking out the window and sticking to Martin. She was relieved that the office had gilded windows. I can't believe it. He thought he was going to pass me by, she said. There was no love there. Everything was done in an animal way. It took him 6 months to attract Angela, training her to replace his wife, who had just finished a divorce after 19 years of marriage. He got tired of his ex-wife's complaints, gained weight, and lost desire. Ashamed to walk hand in hand with her, he finally got free when his twins went to college. Angela, who was the same age as his wife, had a more elegant look. Having the slender figure of a 30-year-old girl, she radiated amazing beauty. Martin already had a vision of how he would update her wardrobe, presenting her as the model wife of the boss. A knock on the window startled Stephen. Are you Stephen Johnson? I asked, opening the window a little. Yes, it's me. The documents are being handed over to you. Please read them carefully. There is a restraining order requiring you to stay 100 meters away from Angela Johnson, Jennifer Johnson, and your family home. And what does Jenny have about the restraining order? Jenny grabbed the envelope after reading the divorce notice. She discovered the restraining order and handed it to him. What the hell? He shouted. God, no, Jenny moaned. Dad, I swear I didn't know. How did she know I was here now? Because I told her. His daughter's confession broke his heart. When you told me that she was cheating on you, I met with her. She told me that she only did it because she has a private investigator's report confirming that you cheated on her. You can't be serious. Have you seen this report? No. Did you believe her and not me? Did you let her set me up? Baby, why? I love you so much. Why did you do this to me? I asked you not to say anything. I swear, Dad, I didn't know about the restraining order. It's all a lie or a mistake. I swear, I haven't said anything like that to anyone. He was crying quietly, ignoring her. Please leave now, Jenny. I can't stand being 100 yards away from you anymore, he said softly. Dad, no, she screamed. Leave, otherwise I may be arrested. And on top of all that, the sheriff is still here and watching me. Reading on, he said, oh my God, they also froze all my accounts. To hell with it. What should I do now? Congratulations to both of you. You've ruined me. I can't even afford to confront this damn powerful law firm with all these false accusations. I will fight in court for the rest of my life. Oh my God, no. I'll fix it, Dad, she said, getting out of the car and heading for the office building. Martina and Angelo finished their business and sat up with satisfied sighs. That was great, honey, she said. I just wish I had binoculars to see his face. When Martin was buckling his belt and Angela was straightening her dress, Jenny burst into the office, shouting, You're a witch. Child abuse. Threats. What's wrong with you? Jenny screamed. I should have attacked first, Angela said. Now he can't enter the house or access our money for a while. Now I have become stronger over him. He didn't insult me. I do not know this for sure. Oh, he's so close to you, Angela said with a grin. Jenny came up to her and asked, He didn't cheat, did he? Of course not. Who needs it? She said with a laugh. You're a monster, Jenny said, and punched her mother hard in the face. Angela collapsed to the ground from shock and pain. Martin laughed and said, Good shot, girl. Jenny froze, then looked around. She saw bookcases, shelves, and a dirty table. She fidgeted disgustedly, looked at Martin and swept everything off the table. Then Jenny looked at him and said calmly, You better never cross my path again, idiot. I can and will hurt you. And she left. Jenny, wait. Damn it. Angela screamed. Martin said, This little nerd is going to pay for this. While she was leaving, she met a man with an envelope in his hand, who asked her, Are you Angela Johnson? Yes, she replied and ran away. Both Angela and Martin laughed at the fact that she was handed a divorce petition from Steve. Jenny desperately tried to talk to her father out of fear, but she knew that he could not talk to her, so he did not answer and cried every time he saw a call from her. He was afraid that Angela would find out and call the police for violating a forbidden order. Angela had already turned him away from all their friends, and only his parents and brother believed in his innocence. His joke-in-law kept him away from his nephew and niece just in case it was true. It almost ruined her brother's marriage to George, until Jenny forced her to reveal the truth. His brother was with George before Jenny forced her to reveal the truth. He couldn't imagine what he had done to deserve such dislike from Angela and betrayal of his daughter. Without even knowing about the abuse claim, she informed her mother that he knew about her affair and the upcoming service meeting. She falsely claimed that she intended to stay with him during Angela's service, but remained silent, knowing that it would be overthrown by him. Jenny was looking for help for her father. After discovering that her mother's divorce papers showed that the lawyer worked in her mother's office, he had no opportunity to contact him. She turned to Grandpa George, hoping for help. What do you want, young lady? Her grandfather asked her. We have to help Dad. I do not know who to turn to. I can't believe what you did to your father, Jenny. What were you thinking? Helping your mother? Grandpa, it's all a lie. I don't blame him for anything. I couldn't imagine that a conflict with her would lead to such an explosion. Okay, Grandpa. I swear I don't blame him for anything. I couldn't imagine that a conflict with her would lead to such an explosion. Okay, I'll see what I can do. Grandpa, is he there? Can I talk to him? He cannot have any contacts until this restriction is lifted. Every call makes him cry, fearing that your mother will find out and involve the police. His lawyer has set a court date, but nothing can be done until then. Jenny, in tears, said, Grandpa, tell him that I love him and miss him. I'll give you a message if I see him. Jenny hung up the phone and cried for a few minutes. When she regained consciousness, she entered her mother's room and threw her underwear and new clothes down the stairs. Several outfits still had tags. Fuck you, Mom, she said, and took out a liquid arsonist from the barn. Pouring it on her clothes, she lit them with matches. Realizing that her mother would be back soon, Jenny sat down in a lounge chair and fried marshmallows over flaming clothes. Angela, driving into the road, saw Jenny and screamed for an explanation. No, Mom, I'm crazy. I decided to show you that you pay for the days when Dad can't talk to me. The destruction of more of your belongings will follow if you don't take down this abuse claim. If you touch me, I will report your abuse and tell everyone that your boyfriend asked me to show him my underwear. Don't worry, Mom. Things will turn to smoke while I'm talking to him. Damn it, Angela exclaimed when she entered the house. She dialed Steve, but as expected, he ignored the call and deleted the unread message. Shortly before that, a neighbor arrived at the scene of the call for a fire truck and a police car, who reported a fire. A policeman and a fireman approached Jenny. What's going on here, young lady? The officer asked. My mom wanted to get rid of clothes that no longer fit her and told me to burn them at the stake, explained Jenny. Obviously, you can't make a fire in the yard. Is your mom at home? Yes, sir. I can use a hose to put it out if you want. The firefighter offered. Did you use anything to ignite, or did you just set fire to your clothes?" The officer asked. "A whole jar of liquid arsonist," she proudly admitted. "We don't have water, but we have sand." "I'll get it," the firefighter said. While he was dealing with the fire, a policeman rang the doorbell. Angela, preparing for a confrontation with her daughter, realized that it was the police. "We will cope with the fire. It's nothing special, officer," Angela said before he could speak. "Madam, did you know that you are violating the city bill by lighting an uncontrolled fire in the yard?" the officer asked. "No, I didn't know," she replied through clenched teeth. "Here's your fine. Just pay it. A court hearing is not required. Next time, madam, think about giving unnecessary clothes to a good cause. Men and women less fortunate than him could certainly benefit from them." With a heavy heart, she closed the door behind her. Angela's legal representative attended a hearing for the restraining order the following Monday, but chose not to pursue its renewal, fully aware that it had been falsely obtained. The order had served its purpose, buying Angela the time she needed and tarnishing Steve's reputation in the process. In response, Steve's lawyer sought charges of perjury against Angela. Unfortunately, the judge couldn't find conclusive evidence to support the claim and dismissed it. Although the restraining order was lifted, it provided little consolation for Steve, who found himself deeply depressed by the false accusations, frozen assets, betrayal from his spouse, and most agonizingly, his daughter's betrayal. Struggling to make ends meet, he took a leave of absence from work and struggled with alcohol, living in utter misery. One afternoon, when both Angela and Jenny were absent, Steve decided to visit his house. Despite changing the locks, he discovered that the garage door was open. As he entered, he found his belongings packed in boxes and garbage bags, only to notice that Angela had left behind the wedding album and family photographs. Despite the strain caused by his troubles, Steve made an effort to stay in touch with his family. Although his parents urged him to seek help from a psychiatrist, he adamantly refused, convinced that he didn't need anyone to validate his miserable existence. Angela's law firm waged a ruthless campaign, informing his employer of the restraining order and the allegations of misconduct, ultimately resulting in Steve's termination. If only he had been in a better state of mind, perhaps he could have contested the moral clause in his contract, which was intended to address such situations. But at that moment, he felt utterly powerless. Steve's whereabouts remained a mystery, with the only communication being phone calls to his family. The only glimpse the outside world caught of him was during mandatory court appearances for his divorce, where he spoke exclusively with his lawyer and the judge. Jenny attempted to engage him during these instances, but he avoided her gaze, resembling the walking dead in her eyes. Angela took great pleasure in the dramatic turn of events, harboring deep resentment towards Steve long before Martin entered the picture. Throughout her manipulative endeavors, her feelings evolved into something close to hatred. After a prolonged legal battle, the divorce finally came to an end. Steve managed to reclaim his fair share of assets, successfully sold the house with his lawyer's help, and retained ownership of his truck. However, false rumors about misconduct involving their child hindered his job search in town, despite the lack of any concrete accusations. Opting for a fresh start, Steve decided to move to Chicago and secured a job as a truck driver. As he loaded his belongings into the pickup truck, he bid farewell to his parents just as Jenny arrived. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she expressed, rushing to hug him. He cried, but did not embrace her in return. "You chose your mother without any evidence, and everything fell apart from there. I had to file for divorce first to catch her off guard. Now you understand why," he explained. "Daddy, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'm leaving now. The false accusation of child misconduct has stained my reputation, and it's something I just can't shake off. Someday, your mother and her lover will pay for this. Goodbye, Jennifer. I love you more than anything in the world." As her grandmother embraced Jenny, Steve seized the opportunity to jump into his truck and drive away. "Angela, will you marry me?" Martin proposed to her on the very day their divorce was finalized. Overwhelmed with joy, Angela said yes and cried tears of happiness while embracing him, causing a scene in the restaurant. "Let's go to your place and celebrate," she suggested after settling the bill. Eager to move in together and renovate Martin's spacious house, Angela immediately made plans to get rid of the old and tacky furniture and curtains left behind by his ex-wife. Their first purchase as a couple would be a brand new bedroom set. As they left the restaurant, Martin couldn't help but chuckle when he spotted his ex-wife, Carol, enjoying a meal with her parents. Carol, disgusted by him and his new mistress, spat at him as they walked by, but he paid her no mind. Steve entered the warehouse where the trucks were kept and spotted his colleague, Lou, standing by the entrance. "Steve, what's up, man? You look like someone ruined your day," Lou remarked. "It's not her. It's my daughter. She took her mother's side, and I just can't handle it," Steve confessed. "She calls and emails me, but I can't bring myself to talk to her. Maybe I should see a psychiatrist. Maybe you should blow off some steam." A voice chimed in from behind them. "Hello, Marianne. That's not a bad idea," Lou added. "Who needs an old, dried-up guy like me anyway?" Steve muttered. Marianne leaned in and whispered words of affection to him before gracefully walking away, leaving onlookers in awe of her as she departed. Encouraged by his friends, Steve declared his readiness to pursue Marianne, declaring that she was his new partner and that they should hit the road together. Their first date involved a nice dinner, a movie, and a trip to Baker Square for coffee and cake. Throughout the evening, Marianne reassured Steve, reassuring him that he was a good person going through a rough time and that everything would eventually work out for him. While reflecting on his past, Steve confided in Marianne about his struggles to understand his ex-wife's hostility during their divorce. He couldn't comprehend what he did wrong and found it difficult to move forward. However, he assured Marianne that it was all in the past and urged her to focus on the future. With a warm smile, he squeezed her hand and suggested they continue their journey. As they bid farewell to their surroundings, Marianne surprised Steve by proposing a visit to her bedroom. With regret, Steve expressed that he longed to accept her invitation. Nevertheless, Marianne, undeterred, took his hand and led him to her intimate sanctuary. Bathed in the soothing moonlight, their kisses were slow and deliberate while they undressed, savoring each moment together. Marianne gracefully laid herself on the bed, while Steve knelt on the floor, expressing his perspective that her loss was his gain. He intended to make the most of this opportunity and let her know that he would be available whenever she desired his company. A week later, a mysterious man dressed in black lurked near the back entrance of an elegant townhouse. He anticipated that breaking in would be necessary, but to his delight, the door was unlocked. Stealthily, he maneuvered through the house, diligently making his way to his intended destination. The room he sought was identical to the one depicted in a Facebook photo, which the arrogant inhabitant boasted by using it as a screensaver. The room was dimly lit by a desk lamp, casting a bluish tint that bathed the surroundings in an ethereal glow. Though the closet door was closed, the room's illumination allowed him a clear view. He cautiously opened the door, positioning himself strategically. The only concern was timing, as he needed to ensure that his target would arrive at the closet before settling down. However, he remained confident that he could execute his plan flawlessly and secure his safety with a carefully constructed alibi. Martin Schindler, totally unaware of his impending fate, entered his home office reluctantly, occasionally glancing at the computer monitor on his desk. With his back turned to the closet, he was vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, the uninvited guest silently opened the closet door, gliding away undetected. At the sound of a barely audible noise, Martin glanced up and discovered a weapon pressed against his temple. Without warning, the trigger was pulled, and Martin's life ended abruptly. After his lifeless body slumped in the chair, the murderer placed the gun in Martin's hand and left behind a simple note on the table, which read "Price paid in full. Swiftly, the shooter departed, leaving no trace behind. When Angela returned home from the store, she excitedly headed towards Martin's office to share her recent purchase of new bedding. However, her excitement was immediately transformed into horror as she screamed at the sight of her lifeless husband. Panic-stricken, she grabbed her cell phone and dialed emergency services, refraining from touching the weapon or note on the table. Detective Devant Jordan received a distressing call and rushed to the Schindler's residence. Upon arrival, he found Angela sobbing in the living room, surrounded by investigators meticulously examining the crime scene within the office. While scanning the room, Detective Jordan noticed a set of brand-new golf clubs in the corner and casually commented on their quality. Engrossed in his investigative duties, he observed the weapon, still clutched in the victim's hand. Curious, he approached one of the first responders and inquired about the situation. The officer informed him that it appeared to be a case of self-inflicted gunshot to the head and identified the victim as Martin Schindler, a successful lawyer and homeowner, while Angela Johnson, his wife, had discovered the body and made the emergency call. The investigation took an intriguing turn when Detective Jordan found a typed note on the computer, unsigned but containing a perplexing sentence. It was a note he couldn't comprehend. Handing the note to Angela, he furrowed his brow, desperately seeking an explanation for its meaning. Angela somberly revealed that it was not a suicide. It was the work of her ex-husband, Steve. She believed that Steve held resentment towards Martin for stealing her away and shared her admission of dating Martin while still married to Steve. As Detective Jordan contemplated the possible motives, including the anger of Martin's ex-wife, he also considered Angela's alibi, which she provided without hesitation. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Detective Jordan paid a visit to Steve Johnson, eager to inquire about his whereabouts on the previous night. Steve explained that he had been driving a rig through Rockford and arrived at the station at 9:30 p.m. Detectives shared the news of Martin's apparent self-inflicted death, subtly hinting at possible inconsistencies. Steve willingly offered additional information, including his new mobile number for future contact. As Detective Jordan departed, he couldn't help but ponder the strange aspects surrounding the alleged suicide, such as the peculiar nature of a left-handed person shooting himself with his right hand, typing the note. The lack of visible marks on Martin's hand puzzled him, leaving him with many unanswered questions as he prepared for further investigations across Chicago. Once alone, Steve sat at his kitchen table, contemplating the meaning of it all, while Lou, his loyal companion, eagerly awaited an explanation. Steve laughed, noting that he couldn't believe his ex-fiancée had committed suicide. Lou expressed hope that his alibi would be confirmed. They laughed and caught beer bottles, raising them in a toast. Angela, sitting in the front row at the funeral, mourned the man who effortlessly took her away from her wonderful husband. Tears flowed for the man who convinced her to take part in a nuclear attack and execute a good man for the sake of change. She was deeply in love with her truck husband until she went to work for Martin. He targeted her, immediately undermining her with condescending remarks about trucks and casual remarks about him during trips. It was too easy for Martin. He sowed a seed that she neglected because Steve was away for a long time due to long trips, and it grew. It was difficult for Angela to decide whether she was crying about the loss of her fiancé or about her husband and the destruction with her daughter. It all seemed like a waste of time. She didn't hear or care what was going on around her. She didn't notice how Martin's ex-wife and daughters were looking at her. They blamed her for his demise. "You can come to the funeral and say goodbye," Angela said, approaching her daughter, who had come home from college for the weekend. Jenny looked at her carefully and said, "How dare you tell me that I should respect the man who destroyed my father? Forget about me. I shouldn't even call this piece of trash a man." She slammed the door shut, driving back to college in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Detective Jordan was in a meeting with his boss, discussing the lack of progress in the case. All the suspects' alibis have been confirmed. Steve Johnson's truck tracking data shows no stops on his journey from Madison to Chicago, and the time frame is the same. The warehouse team identified him as the driver. Checks and surveillance of Angela Johnson establish her stay at Macy's, Victoria's Secret, and Starbucks, as indicated by the forensic window. At the time of her death, Schindler's ex-wife and his daughters were having dinner with her parents, brother, and brother-in-law in honor of her birthday. Jordan said, "Is it your ex's birthday?" The commander asked him. "No, they were just celebrating it." "Yes, I even checked on Johnson's daughter, and she was in college, which takes more than 3 hours to drive to Wisconsin." "Is there any chance that it was suicide?" the commander asked him. "Maybe. I just don't think that's the case." "Well, without suspects, motive, and concrete evidence that it was even a murder, we'll close it as a suicide." Jordan nodded and left the room, upset. 6 months later, Angela invited Jason Davis to dinner. It was their third date, and Angela took him to bed. After a passionate night, Jason went home. He opened a bottle of beer before going to bed and sat down to check his email. Sitting at the kitchen table, the gun was pointed at his head and fired. They put a gun in his hand and left a note. The price was paid in full. Detective Jordan walked through the apartment and entered the kitchen. Before he could say anything, he was handed a suicide note. "Damn it, I think I was right about something else. Now I just need to find out who the hell did this," he told the officer. "Any fingerprints, Mark?" he asked the technician. "Yes, but if I have to make a guess right now, I'd say they crippled." "Are there any witnesses who called the police?" Jordan asked. "A neighbor heard a shot and called for emergency help." "Did anyone see anyone come in or out?" "Of course not." "How did they get here?" "No broken locks, no broken windows. I think it's a balcony." The sliding door was not locked. The victim probably wasn't worried about it, as he was on the second floor. Although it is not difficult to climb up, I would say that any average-sized man could jump down, reach the bottom, and pull himself up. Is the average height for a man or a woman? An ordinary man, a tall woman. "Where is this guy's phone number?" Jordan asked. "In the car, sir." Jordan used gloves to find the last call on his phone. "I just need to check it out." The last call was made by Angela. I'd be surprised if she's not Angela Johnson. After the usual words of condolence and compliments, the detective got down to business. He asked Miss Johnson why her lovers seemed suicidal. Ms. Johnson replied that she believed Steve was punishing her and confirmed that she had been at home all night and her alarm had served as confirmation. She explained that the alarm system responds to the opening of doors and windows and that she activated it when Jason left the day before, deactivating it only upon the arrival of the detective in the morning. She confirmed that the system remained on all night. When asked about her theory blaming her husband for the apparent suicides, she stood by her belief, saying she couldn't imagine anyone else being responsible. The detective investigated the woman's last communication with her husband before the divorce, whether there were any signs that he was following her or contacting her, to which she replied negatively. She remained confident that it was him, despite the lack of evidence. After completing the interrogation, the detective asked about her height out of curiosity and again expressed his condolences before leaving, asking her to stay nearby for further interviews. Was it the same note that the boss asked Jordan to bring when he returned to the police station? "Yes, sir," Detective Jordan said. "Keep me updated on your progress daily. It's too much of a coincidence. The woman's alibi is reliable. Let's see if I can destroy it. But let's see. I'm going to see her ex-husband now," the detective said carefully. "Then let me know what you found out." When Detective Jordan left, he had a bad feeling that all the alibis of the main suspect would turn out to be as reliable as last time. Steve and Marianne were snuggled up on the couch and watching Jack Ryan on prime time when the doorbell rang. "Detective Jordan, what can I do for you today?" Steve asked, gesturing for him to come in. "Jordan, what can I do for you today?" Steve asked, gesturing for him to come in. "Sir, where were you last night at 1:30? On the way from Detroit. I arrived at 2.30. What happened this time? Do you know Jason Davis? I don't think that's true. He was dating your ex-wife. It looks like he shot himself last night. There is no comparable way. Looks like it, right? Maybe she's a killer, a black widow, or something like that. Maybe. Thanks. If I need anything else, I will contact you. Steve slammed the door and laughed. What was that, baby? Marianne asked. It looks like another of my ex-wife's ex-boyfriends has died. Oh my God, she said, covering her mouth with her hand. Yes, thank God, I have an alibi. I hope that whoever kills idiots will find it convenient to choose the moments when I'm on the road. Steve's cell phone rang. He looked and saw that it was Jenny, so he ignored the call. Marianne frowned and said, will she never have a chance? I don't understand why I need this. She's bored without you. She reached out to me, and we talked. What? He shouted, getting up. She calmed him down, asked him to relax, stressing that she was not going to interfere in his decision, and that in the end, he had to live with him. She mentioned that his ex-friend is still following him on Facebook, having seen a recent mark at a sushi bar and expressing joy for him. She informed him that his former friend regularly writes to her to be curious about him and expresses a constant desire to communicate with him. She told how his former friend calls her weekly for informal conversations, showing interest in his affairs and whereabouts. She described how his former friend admired her control over his schedule and appreciated the confidence that he would always be at home when needed. She recalled our conversations about his travels and adventures on the road since childhood, including returning at dawn and breakfast stories about his trips. He sighed, remembering those memories with warmth. Marianne, I love you, but please stay away from this. She hugged him and said, I'm not involved in this. I will never drag you into anything. It all depends on you. I told her bluntly that I wouldn't bring the two of you together. He nodded, hugged her tightly, and stopped the show. I just don't have anything that could connect her to the crime scene, Chief. In fact, there is no evidence that anyone was at the crime scene. There is no forced entry, no fingerprints or footprints, and no inconsistencies in bloodstain patterns. If it wasn't for the identical notes, I would have closed it as suicide. Jordan informed his boss about his ex-husband's alibi and asked how reliable it was. Jordan compared it to a nuclear reactor. They later discussed the whereabouts of Schindler's ex-wife, noting that she had been seen on surveillance cameras at the club with a new partner while her children were at school. 2 years after that, Angela changed her dating preferences and decided not to date men again after cases of self-destruction. However, she continued to engage in casual, intimate relationships, but changed her mind after contracting a sexually transmitted disease. Wanting to settle down, she began dating Lance Forrest. A month later, their relationship became known, although some considered her approach irresponsible. Unfortunately, Lance was fatally injured while watching the game in the house. The weapon was found in his hand along with the same note as before. He picked up his cell phone and was greeted by Detective Stan Anson from Schaumburg. Anson asked if he had any unsolved cases that could be related to his. Jordan confirmed that there is one related to fully paid suicides. Anson mentioned that he had such a case, which surprised Jordan. Anson asked about his relationship with Angela Johnson, who was revealed to be the deceased's girlfriend. Jordan asked about Angela's ex-husband's alibi, to which Anson confirmed that it was strong, since he was driving through Madison at the time. Jordan asked about Angela's ex-husband's alibi, which Anson confirmed was solid. He mentioned that Angela was alone at home when the shooting occurred, and her security system provided an alibi the last time. This time, she had ordered Chinese food, which was delivered within 30 minutes. However, despite the proximity of Angela's house to the crime scene, it seemed impossible for her to commit the crime within that time frame. Jordan agreed with this assessment and decided to meet the next day to compare files. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, all alibis remained unbroken, and no new suspects emerged, leaving the cases unresolved. Steve and Marianne watched with pride as Jenny walked across the stage to receive her bachelor's degree. Steve couldn't help but feel proud and wiped away a tear of joy. Marianne squeezed his hand tightly and kissed it. After the ceremony, as they headed to their car, Marianne suggested that Steve call someone he still loved deeply. However, he declined, revealing that this person had chosen to side with her mother rather than him and only later regretted her decision. He felt betrayed by her lack of support, and it had greatly affected his life. Marianne acknowledged his pain, but he reassured her that the decision had been made, and they had to accept it. Marianne frowned, questioning if he had been as stubborn during their divorce. He admitted that he hadn't been nearly as stubborn back then. 5 years later, Angela and Jenny attended Steve's funeral. It was a large gathering, with many people paying their respects to a good man they had lost touch with over the years. Marianne, Steve's girlfriend, was there too, trying hard not to show her disdain for Angela. Steve's best friend, Lou DeMarco, shared stories about Steve's last years, filling Jenny's heart with precious memories she would otherwise never have known. Marianne was the one who convinced Steve to reconcile with Jenny when he received a terminal diagnosis. For years, Steve had ignored Jenny's attempts to reconnect, but their reunion was now perfectly timed as he faced his final battle. Jenny rescheduled her wedding to have her father give her away before he succumbed to his illness. Steve's last words expressed gratitude to Marianne for reuniting him with Jenny and an apology for never marrying her. Marianne understood and never pressured him into marriage because they were already content. After the funeral, Jenny expressed her gratitude for Steve finally finding peace. Angela tried to reconnect with Jenny during the wake and funeral, but ruined everything with an insensitive comment during the after-service lunch. Alone after everyone had left, Angela claimed that she had finally found peace. Shocked and angered by her mother's words, Jenny confronted Angela, revealing that she had avoided relationships for years, fearing that her father would ruin them. She reminded Angela that he had been acquitted by the police. Enraged, Jenny declared her disgust and hoped that Angela would rot in hell for her actions. Angela raised her eyebrows, trying to explain something, but Jenny interrupted her, saying that despite Angela's requests, she concluded that this was the last conversation between mother and daughter. 10 months later, Angela and her boyfriend Charlie Harlan had dinner at a restaurant with expensive steaks. Charlie expressed his gratitude for the wonderful 8 months they had spent together. Angela squeezed his hand and responded to his words, expressing her initial doubt about the possibility of finding love again, but feeling happy that they had found each other. Then Charlie confessed his love for Angela and proposed. Angela took a deep breath and accepted his offer. At that moment, she thought that he was already dead, and she had nothing to worry about. A week later, Charlie was sitting on his terrace, thinking about the wedding and that Angela would move in with him. He took a deep drag on his Monte Cristo nose cigar, and exhaled smoke. Sighing contentedly, someone pressed a weapon to his temple and pulled the trigger. A pistol was placed in his hand, a cigar was placed in an ashtray, and a note was left under a heavy ashtray on the table. The price was fully paid. Angela, in tears, ended her conversation with Detective Jordan. After an emotional conversation, she went to the bathroom and took a bottle of sleeping pills. Although she didn't need it, she always kept it handy, went to the mailbox, put an envelope in it, and raised a flag indicating outgoing mail. Lying on the bed, she thought about her wedding to Steve, about a wonderful day, about pride in Jenny's career, about family vacations and trips to the park. She wished she had never met Martin Schindler and ruined her life on her own. Finally, she prayed to see Steve soon. Placing the note on her chest, she fell into a final sleep. Her note read, "The price has been fully paid." Jenny came home with the mail and a bag of groceries. She put everything back in its place, hung the keys on the hook, and took off her shoes. Blake, her husband, won't be home until midnight because of his second police shift. To enjoy the silence in the house, she uncorked a bottle of California Cabernet and poured a full glass. After taking a sip, she approached the stack of mail and noticed the letter. Stunned, she screamed when she read the sender's name, Angela Johnson. Tearing it open, she read her mother's last message, realizing the true meaning of her self-destruction. "Wow, Mom," she muttered in the empty house. She dialed Jordan's number on her cell phone. "Detective Jordan, this is Jenny Stanger, the daughter of Steve and Angela Johnson. Hello, young lady. I'm sorry for learning about your mother's self-destruction. Thank you. At least you don't have to investigate." "Yes. How can I help you, Jenny?" "I received a letter from my mother, a confession." "What?" he exclaimed into the phone. The recognition of all the self-destructions that were actually murders. Obviously, she was crazy. "I can't believe it. Damn it. All right, come and meet me at your place as soon as you can." She burned the first page in the fireplace, making sure it was completely burned. The letter said, "Dear Jenny, I offer you this last gift of my repentance. Whether you believe it or not, I love you with all my heart, and I apologize for all the pain I caused you. It wasn't intentional. Hurting you and your father was the worst thing I did. I knew it had to be you when Charlie was eliminated. I accept my punishment and apologize for making you punish me. I hope that now you can live without the pain of my betrayal. Destroy this page and give the second page to the police. The second page is my full confession. I take full responsibility. It's all my fault. I will never be able to give you back the lost years, but I pray for your forgiveness and peace. Share stories of good times with your future grandchildren, not stories about how I ruined our lives. I pray for a long and happy marriage with Blake. Don't give in if someone tries to seduce you. I love you with all my heart, Mom. Please contact someone for help and get the necessary immediate support." The exhausted letter carried the burden of expenses. "Jenny, after receiving this letter, I have already committed suicide. I can't bear the burden of guilt anymore. I ended the lives of these men, my lovers. They paid the price for taking me away from your father. I've always belonged to him. Maybe now I can reunite with him. May God forgive me. My love for you is eternal. I'm sorry for ruining our lives before Martin showed up. We had the perfect family. Mother." Jenny walked over to Detective Jordan's desk and exchanged greetings before taking the proffered chair. While Detective Jordan was reading the letter, he expressed his regret to Jenny for suspecting her. Jenny agreed, expressing disbelief at her mother's actions and suggesting that her mother might have lost her mind years ago. She struggled to comprehend why her mother would date men just to hurt them, finding it difficult to understand. Jenny acknowledged that her mother's involvement in some slaying seemed plausible, given that her whereabouts were unknown at the crime scenes and the lack of substantial evidence. She had always considered the possibility of her father or Schindler's ex-wife being responsible, but their alibis could not be disproven either. Jenny felt relieved that it was all over. The killings, her mother's pain, and her own suffering. With a wide smile on her face, she bid farewell to Detective Jordan and left the police station. As she stepped outside, Jenny paused, opened the car door, looked up at the sky, and whispered, "Thank you, Mom."